Hi again everybody, welcome to my latest video. Well, this is where the server fun starts. This is my final video on setting up the SAMBA Active Directory. So I'm going to demonstrate how to do the final configuration, including how the PCs will talk to it and how we set permissions on the shares that are on there. A little bit different than a NAS, so I have to show you how we're converting it as well from how we used it last time as a NAS to how we're now using it through Active Directory. So well, I hope you enjoy and I hope you get something out of it, and if you do, I hope you consider subscribing to my channel. That would be very helpful. So anyway, without any further ado, let's get started into the final steps of configuring the PCs and XigmaNAS as an Active Directory and file server combined. The first thing we have to do is make sure that the XigmaNAS server is properly set up to be an Active Directory in terms of file shares. So we're in the actual management portal. In the background you'll see that the server is running. Same address we always set it up as. But the first thing I'd like to look at is to make sure that the shares are properly set up. So if I come over here to data sets, which is the first part of creating a share, all of these shares are configured a certain way. Let me show you, for example, what my share looks like. It's the same configuration we saw before. Make sure that you have the pass-through for inherited all entries and for pass-through for ACL mode. Of course, I have reservation and quota listed for this one. You don't have to do that, but it's recommended. But this is important. Make sure that the owner is set for root and the group owner is set for wheel, and that all of the permissions are opened up to the world. So all of them are checked. It may seem like we have all security turned off, and it is if we're using it as just a file server, as a regular NAS, but not when it is going to be accessed through Active Directory, as we'll see in a few minutes. And if you look at all the shares, including this new special one that I've added called E on the library, they're basically all set the same way. The second thing we have to look at is the user accounts. They're going to be managed by Active Directory. You have to basically disable all the accounts or delete them. I just chose to disable them, and that's pretty easily done. You pick on any one of them and all you have to do is this little checkbox. You can check it or uncheck it, and then when you of course apply and go back and apply again, then that'll be the case. I didn't change it, just showed you what it was like. So these are all the accounts I had created. They're still there, I just disabled them. You don't want a conflict because we do have the permissions opened up on those data sets. This could basically eliminate all your security if you leave these active and some PC out there is able to map to one of the data sets or one of the shares which the data set is going to be the basis for. So that's important. Then the final thing you have to do is go to the actual SMB shares. You have to have a share in order for Active Directory to see it, just like you needed it when it was just a regular file server, a NAS file server. There are some specific configurations here you better make sure we have enabled, however. First of all, in the settings, we need to make sure that we have a check mark on Enable Store of DOS Attributes. By default, that's not the case. So make sure if that's not checked, and it probably isn't, edit, then check, and then save. There'll be a save, an enable button here. Then you go back and enable it in the main screen. But the actual shares have special configurations too. So let's pick any one of these shares that we happen to have. I'll pick mine. The share I have for my home directory is what the intent of that is. If you take a look at it, pretty much all this is the same with a couple of exceptions. Make sure you have these three checkboxes enabled. Enable ZFS ACL, enable ACL inheritance, and store alternate data stream extended attributes, but uncheck the store NTFS ACL. We only want Windows itself to manage those. We don't want them being stored in this particular server. It will lead to confusion. And then everything else is basically the same. The rest of it's blank, and this is true for all of the shares that I have established here. Now do notice something. As I said, I created a special one called E library. That's meant to be a group share. So it'll be accessed by everybody, but only a couple of people will have right access to it, depending on what's in that library. So library administrators will be enabled to get to it. But it is set the same way as we normally do. And make sure that those same three checkboxes are there. As long as those are all done, then this server is ready to become an Active Directory server. Just make sure that all of the shares are done the same way, and that all of the accounts are disabled, and that all of the data sets have the configuration that I showed you. open basically to the world, at least for now. Okay, what I have here is a regular Windows 10 image. It's basically a base install. The only thing I did is I added a few icons to the desktop. And I want to use this to actually do a couple of things before we get started with configuring the RSAT tools onto the Active Directory server. First, I need to activate the RSAT tools. So the way that we do that is we go to Settings, Apps, Optional Features. We click Add Features. And if we go down to the bottom, you will see a bunch of RSAT tools. Let me put up on the screen here the list of some of those tools so you can get an idea of what they look like. So I've organized the 21 different RSAT tools on this list and the next screen that I show into the ones that I suggest you install and the ones that you probably never will install unless you become an enterprise network administrator with a bunch of Windows servers running on it. So these here that I have in green are the ones that you should always install. Some may not fully function with XigmaNAS, however. They may only partially function, but it doesn't hurt to install them anyway because you may find a use for them later. The main one is the Active Directory Domain Services Lightweight Directory Services tools, but also the Group Policy Management tools and the Remote Desktop Services tools. This list are the ones that you only need if you're going to be an enterprise network administrator. Very unlikely that you would ever use them in some network that's less than a couple of hundred or even 1,000 users. So that's unlikely if you're setting up a network like I have. I will never install these tools. There's no need to do that. But I did want to give you a complete list. So in terms of that list of tools, the way we install them, and I'll show you the first couple and then I'll zoom ahead. If we go down to the ones that are most critical, the RSAT Active Directory Certificate Services, no, but this one, the Active Directory Domain Services, you click on it and it says install. Now once it's installed, it'll disappear from this list, okay? That's how you know it's been installed. It takes a couple of minutes for some of them, some go very fast. It depends on how much is involved, and it's already disappeared. So if we go down to the DHCP service tools, let's install that. Most likely you may need to get into this. Same thing for the DNS, Group Policy Manager for sure. So definitely the DHCP server tools, let's install that. Okay, so I think I got all the ones we want. I backed up to the previous menu so we see what's actually installed, right? So we're not in the add a feature anymore. We're now in the, show what's there. And we have the Active Directory Domain Services one. We have the DHCP, DNS, the File Services, Group Policy Manager, Remote Access Manager, Remote Desktop Services Manager, and the Server Manager, which is not likely you'll use that one, but put it in there anyway because there may be pieces of it that you might use in the future. If you just want to install it, you click on it and then you can click on uninstall, but I won't do that right now. So now I'm done with the installing of the RSAT toolkit. You don't even have to reboot at this point. The next step is to change the DNS for this Windows image, or Windows PC if it was a real PC. And we have to go to the network sharing, which has gone through the control panel. That's why I always like to have that handling. Network and sharing. Then you go into change adapter settings. In this case, I only have one adapter, this one Ethernet adapter. You double click on that. It gives you the options for the adapter. You want to change its properties. And there's only one property you want to touch, and that's the one that is an Internet Protocol version 4 TCP/IP. We don't have version 6 installed, even though it looks like it's able to be configured. Don't do that unless you know you have that configured on it. So we're going to do properties again, but only on this one piece of it. And what we want to change here is right here. It's set to get a DNS automatically from the default gateway, which is my router. I want to change that. I want to make it go to my XigmaNAS Active Directory server. So now I'll manually type it all in. So that address was 172.16.1.210. Now you should always set up your alternate one as the one that is on the internet, which I was using, which is the Google, I believe that's the Google DNS server. So once you've done that, we click OK. We close, and then even though it's not prompting us, we need to do a restart. In order for that to take effect, we need to have a restart done. So let's come in here and do a restart. It's completely restarted at this point. So let me log in again. We only have one account on this PC, David under admin, and I'll double check that now just to make sure. But I'm going to log into my regular root account here. So let's look at the user accounts. Make sure that I don't have any other accounts here. For the same reason that we didn't want them on the actual XigmaNAS, we don't want them here either. So there are no other accounts here, only the David under admin account. That's the way I had configured it, and I didn't add any accounts to it. So that's the first check. Now let's see if we're using the new DNS. So what I'm going to do is run as the administrator a command prompt, and I'm going to first show you that I can ping Google. Okay. Tries 3 times, it shows the return response time and everything looks good. Now let's see if I can ping my server but using its name on my local domain. If I had not configured this right, I would not be able to do this. So if I ping, that particular server is testpdc.pe4doers.com. And it answers. I didn't have to type in the IP address. It automatically, and that's what a DNS does for you. It converted the text name to an IP address, so we know it's configured right. So we have the DNS running. Now at this point, we need to actually connect it to the domain. And the way we do that is we right-click on this PC. There's a couple of different ways to do it. This is the way I like to do it. Click on Properties. And over here where it says the fact that its computer name is WinC, going to Workgroup US Coopers, I do change those settings. And what I really want to change is to a domain. I don't want that workgroup anymore. I want to change it to a domain. So I do this. It's right now set for this workgroup, which was my default. I'll leave the name of the computer the same. That's a decent name. If it had one of those really obscure names, I would suggest you change that as well. Otherwise, it would be hard to see it when you look at it from Active Directory. It may be hard to find amongst other weird names. But we have to type in the domain here. Now, for the domain, all we type is the actual domain part to the left of the .com, and not including the actual machine name. So all it is, it has to be all capitals, PE4doers. That is my domain that was set up. If you recall from the initialization of the Active Directory, that's what I put down as the NetBIOS name. We say OK. It's now asking for an account that's authorized to do this. Now, there's only one account on the Active Domain server, and that was administrator, fully spelled out. And the password was the password I set during the initialization of the SAMBA Active Directory service. So that's what I'll type in here. Now validating whether or not it can get into it with those credentials. We'll see if it works. If you type it in wrong, it'll prompt you for it again. And there we go. Welcome to the PE4doers domain. So it worked. Click OK to that. Now it's going to prompt us to reboot. It says close everything. I'll say OK, we'll close everything first. And then it says you must restart. This would have to definitely restart it. Make sure you do. Let's restart it. Okay, let's see how different it looks now. Now it gives me the choice of logging into the standalone account, which I had before, which I'm not going to do. I'm going to go right into Other User. And it's telling me right here, sign in to PE4doers. So it's expecting me to sign into the domain if I'm not logging into the one local account that I have established. So I have to type it all in. No backslashes on this one. PE4doers. Now a backslash, and I have an account there called what? There's only one, administrator. And I need to put that password in again now. The same one I used before to join the domain. It's welcoming me, still validating me against the server credential database. Okay, got through. So now it's as if I'm a brand new login. I never logged into this PC prior to this. Goes through the same process in Windows. And there we are. We actually have it set up in the domain. It's hard to tell right now. It looks very similar to what it was. The thing I have to do though is I want to set up my icons. Unfortunately, it has that blocked by default. So if I try to go in here and I try to do a personalize and I try to change the themes and the icon settings, it says I don't have permission to do that, even as the administrator. So I have that disabled by default in the image that's in the Active Directory server. That's okay. There's a way around that one. What I do is just down here, I just type the icons that I want. I want Control Panel. I'm going to right click on that, say Pin to Start. And then I want this PC. Right click on that, say Pin to Start. So it didn't completely block everything. This is under the group privileges that we'll talk about later that is being used to prevent me from actually going in and doing it through themes. So let me get out of this. And then in the start, I can do it. I can take these and I can move them out. So I got the icons that I like to use here, okay? So what I want to do first is run administrative tools. Now I'm talking to a server, and the main one, which I mentioned before, you can be spending a lot of time in, is the Active Directory users and computers. Now I've already created accounts on that particular domain server. It takes a while to start up. I double clicked it, but it doesn't come up right away. Okay, there we go. And we know that it worked because guess what? It sees the actual domain, the PE for doers here. This little arrow here, I click it down and I can see all of the things that I have available to me. So if I want to look at the users, I click on that. So right now I've already created a bunch of users here. Users I created here, except for guest and administrator. Those were, as it says here, built-in accounts. So I created Commander Spock, my David under admin, my David Rivera, which is just logged in as David. We got McCoy and we got Kurt. So all of those users are now present. And we got a lot of functionality with this. It's not entirely the way you'd like to have it. For example, let's try creating a new user. I'll create Uhura, Communications Officer. If I click in here and I go New, what I did is I right-clicked over here. You can also right-click up here. It's the same difference. And I say New User, or Lieutenant Uhura, and we'll just have our login being Uhura, right? And it'll be at PE for doers. I can add other stuff in here if I want, but that's all I need. Next, I have to give her a password, and I'm going to set it up so that it'll default to this. The user must change a password upon next login. I could set it so that they cannot change their own password, which means only the administrator can. I could set it up so that the passwords never expire. I could set it up so that the account is disabled from here. I have a password that I will use by default, and I'll call it start 567 asterisk. And I had to put it in both places. It won't let you pick a weak password. Hopefully I typed it the same, and I'll do next. And that's exactly what it'll do. It even says here how it's going to do it. Full name, it'll be Uhura at pefordoers.com, and she'll have to change it upon login for the first time. So we will finish this up. And now we have a Lieutenant Uhura who has an account. So let me go ahead and log in. I'm going to open up another Windows. I have another Windows image back here running. Right now, the last one that logged in here was administrator. So this was the one that I've been using before when I was doing those account creations on the server. The one that I just showed you on was a brand new one that I created, but it should work here. I have all of these folks here that have already logged in, and they happen to all be people who have accounts on the Active Directory, but only one shows that it's PE for doers. That's the default one for administrator. These here will default to that, so I could actually click on them and it would default to that as well. It may not show me PE for doers, but it will be there. And all I have to do is type the password. But none of the ones I want are there, so I'll click on Other User. But since Uhura never logged into the domain before, I have to set it up so that she can log in. So I have to give it the full thing. I have to say PE for doers / Uhura. I will give the default password that I gave, and I think I got it right. Let me see, hit enter. It says here the user's password must be changed before signing in. It follows that flag that I set in the Active Directory. So I'll say okay to that. It already knows my current password. I have to give it a new password. Type it twice. It's like Santa Claus, right? And then hit enter. It says the password has been changed. This is like being in a real company's computer systems at this point. Work exactly the same. If any of you happen to work for a company that has Active Directory set up, which most medium to large companies will have, it's a brand new account, and we're going in. Okay, here we are with that same initial setup that we saw when we logged in as administrator in the other one. So what I will do here is all I need is the this PC icon, drag it over here. And right now I just have the local connections to this account. So the drive C, and it still has the CD installed according to the image, right? I never disconnected the CD from the image, so it's still there, as I said in a previous video. Will I be able to do much else? First of all, I won't be able to have her access her home directory because it doesn't exist, but I can access others. So for example, if you look at my users that are still here on the other login as administrator, we could pick one. Doesn't really matter. Let's pick McCoy. So if I come over here, he has a share. Actually, let's connect the share that I have as a general purpose one for everybody to connect to. So if I do computer and I say map network drive, let's just call it L for library. I now have to give it the full path, test with the full name of the server as well, PDC, because that's also my file server, the same name. It is called E under library. I can't change the name of it. How the share is created. The share is created as that. And as I reconnect this login, let's see what happens. There we are. We're in the E under library share. We're actually on the XigmaNAS server file as a file server, and we are also going through the Active Directory to get to it. Now let me quickly show you how that was configured so that you can see. So first of all, let's go in and make an Uhura share. So if I come in here, I first have to create a data set, like I showed before. So disk ZFS, the actual data set. I come in here and create a data set, do a plus. We'll call it Uhura, but with a capital U. How's that? That's what we're naming it. That'll be her home directory. We want to turn the compression on. Leave that alone, leave that alone. We got to change this to pass-through. We got to change this through pass-through. Doesn't matter whether it's extended attributes or not, but I'll leave that alone. And if you notice, it actually has defaulted to what it has to default to. So this is the data set as set up. But I do want to give a reservation. I'm going to give a minimum of 5 gigabytes and a quota of 5 gigabytes. I don't want any more than that. And then we'll do an add, and then we do an apply. So now we should have an Uhura data set. But it's no good unless we also create a share. So we got to go into SMB, we have to go into shares, we have to add a new share. And the new share is going to be Uhura, and you got to give it a comment, it's a required field. Uhura share. I have to give it the path in the pool. So I click on zpool, and I see Uhura here now. That's what I want it to be, zpool Uhura, okay? I have to change these flags. I have to set them. By default, they're not set, but I need to set them. I like to turn off the recycle bin, but that's me. And I think that's it. So at this point, all we have to do is say add, and then apply changes. And we're done with that. So now we can go back to the administrator. We want to go back to the administrator, and we got to do a couple of things here in order to get that to work. Well, first of all, we could just mount it if we wanted to. Uhura could actually mount it at this point. It's opened up to the world though. We want to actually, at this point, go into, the server itself is under domain controller. It's not under computers. If you ever study Active Directory, you'll find out that most people don't put the Active Directory domain controller and the disk servers in the same machine. We do it here because it's a small network. But if I right click on the domain controller and I say manage, that's an error you always get, don't worry about it. It now automatically opens up a special copy, an RSAT tools copy, even though it's the same name as the non-RSAT tools copy of the computer management service. So if you notice here, I have something called shares. I want to click on shares. And I got to click here as well, double click it. These are all the shares that this server knows about. Uhura is here. For example, let's take a look at E under library. So if I right click on that and say properties, we'll be able to see what the actual permissions are, the share permission. That's what I'm interested in here. Right now it has everyone who only has read access, and my home directory has full power over that share. Just the way I set that one up. Because I'm the manager of the development team, I have full control. Anything that's going to go into the library, I'm going to make sure it's right. But let me show you with Uhura, which is a brand new one that I made. Let's do properties, right click and then get properties on it. Go into share permissions, and it only has one. Everybody has full access to this share. That's the default. That's how we set it up in XigmaNAS, but that's not how we want it. So now we're going to do the NTFS permissions on this, and we do that by adding, first of all, somebody who will have all the access. And who do you think that is? Uhura. And you click on this little box to check names. It finds out she's a legitimate user. It gives us the full path to it. That's good. We click on it. We don't have to. We say okay. Now we have a Lieutenant Uhura entry in here. Right now she only has read access. I want to reverse this. I want to have her with full power, and I want to have everyone else with only read access. We can double check and look. That's the way we want it. We say apply. We say okay. So now the protections are set on that. So only Lieutenant Uhura can have full access to that file. This is very important because it's useless to have a file server if you can't protect it. Just remember, you got to protect it through Active Directory because we did not protect it any other way. So at this point, let's close this one, and we'll do another mapping. So we'll say computer, map network drive. I like to use U for user account shares. You have to give it the full path. Test PDC /Uhura. Remember what I did though is I did it with a capital. Let's see if it matters. And we open up into Uhura. Now look what Uhura can do. Uhura can do whatever she wants. We can create a new folder. We can call it what we want. Test Uhura. We can go in there and we could create a file. I don't have Office installed, so I'm just going to create a text file and say test file. Open it up and I can edit it. I can do everything I want to it. 1, 2, 3, and then save it. And all is honky-dory. Now how do we know the permissions are working? Seems like she has full access, and she does. We set it up that way. Let me now log in as a different user. So I'm going to go in here and let's log in as McCoy and see what we get. Will McCoy be able to do the same thing? So if we come in here and we say, click on this one. Have I logged in as McCoy lately? Yeah, I did right here. So I'll click on that. Now, since he logged on recently, I should be able to just type his password. And it worked. So now I am logged in to the domain as McCoy, because it defaulted to that, as I said earlier. Does he have any shares mounted? He actually does. He already has the eLibrary mounted. Well, let's map another one. Let's map Uhura's home directory for him. He wants to go over there and muck with her files for some reason. He's a jokester, by the way, right? So he'll just make that like X. He's going to do some damage there, right? And he wants to map it. Test PDC. Uhura. He was able to open it. Can he see her files? Well, let's see. He sees a directory. Can he get in there and see what the files are? Yeah, you can see it all right. What happens if he tries to muck with it? Let's right click on it and let's try to delete it. Try again. You don't have permission for this. Access denied. So we now know the permissions are working, fully working. Okay, so anyway, that's basically what I wanted to show. I could go on, but there's no point. I will mention as a teaser, I don't know if I'll make a future video about it, but you can definitely go and learn about it on your own. I am not teaching this, as I said before, to make you earn a certification from Microsoft. There's a lot more to it that you'd have to cover, including a very nice one, which is to set up group policies. But I'm not going to cover that in this video. I've covered all of the material I wanted to cover, and it's long enough. So what'd you think about that? You know, it's a very powerful tool. As I showed in the video, setting it all up, it's just like a Windows server if you've ever worked at one of those, or if you worked for a large company that uses one of those to control all of its PCs and the logins of all of its users. Any company beyond a couple of hundred people will definitely be using something similar to this. And most likely it will be Windows servers that'll be behind it all, and Active Directory is a service that'll be doing all the work. So I hope you got something out of this that you like. If you did, please do me a favor and consider subscribing to my channel. It would really be helpful. It'll help this channel grow, and it'll help you get notices either in YouTube when you log into it, or if you want some more detailed notices, you can get emails sent to you as well. So anyway, if you can, click on the little head that'll pop up here, follow it along, and subscribe. It would be very helpful, and I would appreciate it. So, well, until the next time, take care.